Hi, my name's Steve Consalvez and I'm sat here in the UK Firewalking Academy. We look after people from all over EMEA and Europe here who train on the firewalk instructor training and for fire tending and other things associated with firewalking. I also work with Tolly Burkan and Kevin Axtell at the Firewalking Centre on their international operations and their corporate sales development. But what I want to share with you today is some of the things that I've discovered in 25 years spent selling and promoting and getting involved with personal development. Because one of the things that I learned when I first started was that there were so many people who you could go to for inspiration. Back then, the main people to listen to were Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, and then there was the up-and-coming Tony Robbins. But there was a whole wealth of other people, Dennis Waitley, and these people you could pretty much only get videos and audio tapes and books at the time. But the people that impacted me the most were those ones that had a story, were those ones that would express their findings and what they were bringing to the world through the experience of their lives. So Zig Ziglar talks about goals a lot, but then he shares with everybody how he used his manifestation of the things that he wanted for himself by, for example, gaining health. He talks about being a 46-year-old fat boy, starting to go jogging when jogging was just becoming popular, and how he went from, I think it was a 48-inch waistline to a 34-inch waistline in less than a year by taking up jogging. And he talks about this in terms of, the goals and having a goal and how you set a goal and how you go about that and the mental preparation that you need in doing that. But the thing is that without that backstory, you just wouldn't have got or perhaps even listened to his story and understand what it was about him that made him worth listening to. The truth of the matter for me is that there are many, many people around the world who, for example, have disabilities. My own niece was born with cerebral palsy. There are people who are born without arms and legs. But the reason why you've probably heard of Nick Vujicic is because Nick has taken his story and taken it out to the world. And if you ever get the chance to meet with Nick Vujicic, as I have, then you should jump at that opportunity. Because when you hear Nick and meet him personally and hear his story, you really do get it in your heart what he is about. And you can express more about his story and it impacts you more mentally than by just reading his book or looking at his DVDs. Now, when you think of some of the old school, the mentors of antiquity, you perhaps think about people like Gandhi and Buddha and perhaps Jesus and so on. But there's a whole raft of other people who have offered information that have inspired us. I mentioned before about Wayne Dyer, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, Stephen Covey. Some of these folk, they've all inspired millions upon millions of people. But one of the things that's interesting is that when you talk to any of these people, or if you've had the opportunity to speak with these people, all of them have a mentor. All of them have a mentor. They talk about people who they looked up to, who inspired them with their story, with their words, with their experience. Just recently, of course, we had the passing of Wayne Dyer. And Wayne was very, very good at talking about the people who he was inspired by. Jim Rohn talks about Earl Shroff, who he was inspired by and who he got a lot of his quotes from. Tony Robbins was inspired by Bandler and Grinder, who taught him NLP. But also, Tony was inspired by Tolly Burkan. But you only get so much by reading books. My experience is that seeing and meeting and training with Richard Bandler in the flesh, you get a different perspective. You get a sense of how NLP came about. You get a sense from him talking about the experiences they had, about what made a difference. I personally was so motivated and inspired by some of the stories that were in Richard and John's books about NLP, about Milton Erickson, that I wanted to know more about Milton. Now, sadly, he died in 1980, so it wasn't possible for me to meet up with him. But what I went from that is I read into his collected works. So that's 1,500 pages of pure Milton Erickson. And you find out from that more about the man, and it's that that makes it more inspiring. So throughout all of this, you know, I would say if you've got the opportunity to see some of these people, I was due to meet up with Zig Ziglar. A friend of mine, John Brown in the US, in Dallas, had set up a meeting. I went to Zig's church, but unfortunately he was becoming more and more frail, and he'd had a fall that week and he was unable to attend church. Of course, a couple of weeks later, he was no longer with us. And I felt absolutely devastated that the opportunity that I'd had to meet with the great man had been passed. So whether it's Wayne Dyer, who was somebody else who was on my list, Jim Rohn was on my list, Zig was on my list, you know, what I have found with those people who I have met, like Nick Vujicic, like Jack Canfield, like Tony Robbins, Richard Bandler, John Grinder, Tolly Burkan, all of these people, when you meet them in the flesh and you get their story, it impacts you. And it impacts you more because when you hear their backstory, you understand how much more impacting it is. And some of the challenges that they went through to get the information to you. So if what they give is good value information, and it's kind of different these days because, you know, with Tony Robbins really appeals to my sort of left brain thinking. You know, he's got a lot of information in there and it's very analytical and I can just get it. But actually, when you hear his backstory and where he came from, that seems to hit more than the fact that he's this super successful multimillionaire, probably multi-billionaire by now, successful entrepreneur who's been helping people for the past 35 years or so. So what I would say is whoever has inspired you, whoever has been on your bucket list to go and see, you know, don't do what I did and I was waiting for Wayne Dyer to now come to the UK, and of course he just passed away recently. You know, I've had a lot of Wayne's books, Gifts from IKISS and Transformations, you'll believe it when you see it. And all of these have inspired me. Get out to see these people. This especially resonates with myself because, of course, now I work with Tolly Burkan. And Tolly Burkan is the only person that I know who has inspired and, if you like, mentored some of the greats that are around today. Because when you think about Jim Rohn and Earl Sharoff, they had one mentor, but Tolly has inspired Tony Robbins, T. Harv Eker, James Ray, Andy Harrington, and all of these people now, including our lesser group. You know, people tell me that the stuff that I do is incredibly inspiring, and I'm flattered by that. But I have to give praise to those that have come before me. Tony, Richard, John, but it was my meeting with Tolly Burkan in 2006 that really set me on a road different from the one I was in. Back then I was working in corporate, had a fantastic life, but I'd always known that inspiring people was what I wanted to do. In 2006, meeting Tolly for the first time, his journey became apparent to me, how he'd created this firewalking experience for everybody. And that was the turning point for me. Yes, I'd ran my own firewalks. I'd walked with Tony Robbins 4 or 5 times. I'd worked for Tony Robbins. I was his top closing promoter in Europe. I'd met Tony. He'd shaken my hand. We'd shared the stage together, you know, but the firewalking experience was nothing, didn't prepare me for anything against Tolly Burkan's firewalk instructor training. back in 2006. And that in itself inspired me to bring that course, bring the way that Tolly does it to the UK, which of course I did in 2010. So what I would say to you is, don't hang around waiting for at some point in the future when you're going to commit not just to reading Tolly's books and looking at his videos, but to meeting him. Get yourself up and get it done now. Tolly's health is something that has been well publicized in the books and on the various videos that he's been on. So his story is incredible. Not just the 2 suicide attempts, but when he walked away from his life, the fact that he's been hit by numerous cars and his spine is completely misaligned. Now the benefit for you for that is that you get to work with him in his house. The downside is you need to act soon because, he's really ramping down now. So I'm thoroughly committed to this. I would like to invite you to come and spend some time with Tolly and myself this November on one of Tolly's mastery programs. So this is like a fit on steroids. I can't even begin to explain to you how life-changing this was for me again. So I first went on this a couple of years ago, and it was another level, because what Tolly is sharing with people now, he has never shared with people before, and never shared it the way that he does before. In previous years, certainly in 2006, Tolly was a very intense human being. He was really into people paying attention. And if his perception was that you weren't paying attention, boy, did you know it. But Tolly himself has now transitioned into this human being who really wants everybody to understand, not just up here, but here, the message that he wants to get over. So you've probably already done fire walking if you're listening or watching this now. So you're going to get something very, very different there. But I would suggest to you that you connect with me, find out what we're doing, and get on the train or the plane or the automobile and get over to meet Tolly this November, because you never know when it's going to stop. You never know when you won't have the opportunity anymore. It's going to be just 5 days or 9 days out of your life, and I promise you, you will be a different person when you walk out the end. I'd done all this stuff. I'd done NLP. I'd become a master trainer with NLP, a certified coach trainer with NLP. I'd done all of that. I'd changed my life. I'd become financially independent. I'd turned my life around so that I could now bring people into this wonderful environment here in Cambridgeshire and inspire them with Tolly's firewalk instructor training. But when I did Tolly's Mastery, it changed me again. So join me. I will be there in November. Connect with me. I'll tell you all about it. Connect with us. Get onto the list. We'll send you information about it. And I can promise you, it will be a game changer for you, because Tolly really is in these very few individuals who have changed the way that we think. I think he's going to go down in history as somebody who really has changed the way that we think on this planet of ours. And I would suggest to you that you get yourself on the course and get yourself while you still have the opportunity. And you'll be spending this time with Tolly in his home. It's a very, very large home, but you'll be spending time with Tolly and understanding what it was that drove him to design and develop these very, very radical ways of extreme spirituality. So connect with us. Click on the link, which will either be here, or for mobile devices, it will be down here. So click on the link, connect with us, and we look forward to seeing you in November, or connecting with you for future events in California or in the UK or in other locations in Europe. So this is Steve Consalvez saying thank you for looking at this video, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you.